Thank you for watching over us. I pray that you give us eyes to see your hand in the things in our lives. Thank you for those who've chosen to be here today. Bless us, and I pray that you'd watch over and protect us and bless those for whom prayer has been mentioned this morning. Be what is needed in each case. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. If Paul were here today, I think he'd be a great Christian psychologist, great counselor, just a brilliant theologian. And there are a number of issues that he mentions in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 that deal with your conscience. And conscience is an interesting word. Co-owner, co-regent. It means a co-owner is two people own 100% of the same thing. So co means together with. And science is the word for knowledge. And so co-science means to have knowledge of the same thing. That's what the word conscience means. Now, here's the question. Who are the two people that know the same thing? Co-science. You have a conscience. I have a conscience. And it means that we have co-knowledge, co-understanding. We have co-wisdom of something. Well, the first person is you. It's me. You know certain things, right? You know it's wrong to kill. Who else knows it's wrong to kill? There's one other person that knows it's wrong to kill. God. So, who are the two people involved in a fully functioning, healthy conscience? Me and God, exactly. God knows what's right and wrong. Now, I don't always know what's right and wrong. Do you? And so, when your conscience is clear, and your conscience is in line and in harmony with God's intent for our life, that means I know what God knows about what's right and wrong. And that is very possible. Now, if there's ever a disagreement, who's wrong? We are. God's never wrong about anything. All right, so look in chapter 10. We're in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, beginning in verse number 23. All things are lawful for me. Question. Is he talking about stealing and lying and killing and adultery? Are those things lawful? No, that's not what he's talking about. So let's keep this in perspective here. All things are lawful for me, but not all things are expedient, and the word expedient means profitable. There are things that Paul could do, but it wasn't wise for him to do. And he's going to give us an example of that in his culture. Now, this is really not an issue in our culture very much today, but other things are about what you're allowed to do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. And the answer may not be real well received by a lot of people. So he says, all things are lawful for me, but not all things edify. So Paul says, there are things that I have the liberty to do, but they wouldn't build your faith. They wouldn't encourage you, so I'm not going to do them. What would most people think? Well, I don't care what it does for you. I'm going to do it anyway. I don't live for you. That's the way a lot of people approach life. You don't like it? Hang you. I'm going to do it anyway. And do you think Christians ever approach life that way? I think we do. Is that right or wrong to do that? That's wrong to do that. What if the activity itself is not wrong, but someone else has an opinion that shouldn't be done? Should you do it or should you not do it? Don't do it. That's come on, man. Do you ever have what's called intentional autonomy? Can I ever do what I want to do? Yes, with some limitations. And so look what he says in verse number 24. Let no man seek his own, but every man another's wealth. And the word wealth doesn't mean money, it means welfare. So am I responsible for not offending you? I am. What would offend, if I did, name something that I could do that would offend you as a Christian. Lie? Okay. Okay. Curse God? That would offend you as a Christian, as it should. Lying? I think that should. Blasphemy? Okay. How about stealing? Going to Walmart and shoplifting something and my name's all in the paper, and that would probably offend you, and you probably would find another church to go to. I think you would probably be wise to do that, as a matter of fact. And so I am to seek not my own welfare, your welfare. What's best for you? What would encourage you? What would do you well? Okay? Whatsoever is sold in the shambles that eat. Now, the word shambles is an old English word for meat market. Okay? So, Paul says this. In Corinth, now, this is where this church was located. It was a Grecian city, very, very much a pagan city. And there were Christians in this city. And let's say that you go to the meat market. And there's beef hanging all over the place. And you go in as a Christian. You go in and say, I'll have, give me 5 pounds, a 5-pound roast. Should you ask, now has this been offered in sacrifice to an idol? Should you ask that? No. Because here was the deal. In first century Corinth, as in many, many centuries, cities in the first century, they would bring a heifer or a bull to their pagan temple, and they would trim a little bit of the tail hair. And they would burn that tail hair on the altar, which meant that entire animal was sacrificed to that pagan god. There was no God, okay, because there is but one God, and that is not the God of this temple. And so it was just sacrificed to nobody or nothing. And so they would take portions of that meat and have this sacrificial meal, and then they'd sell the rest of it to the shambles or to the meat market. So some of that meat had indeed been offered in sacrifice to idols, but there is no other God, so it was sacrificed to nobody. So here goes a Christian in there, and he says, hold on, by the way. Was that roast offered in sacrifice to an idol? Well, yes, it was. Well, I don't want anything to do with it then. Do you have one that's not sacrificed to an idol? Well, we've got the non-sacrificial meat over here, and this. Should you do that? Paul says no. Don't do that. Because number one, it was sacrificed to nothing. It was all symbolism. And so he says, whatsoever is sold in the shambles, eat it, asking no questions for conscience sake. So there we go. You don't make your decision based on that, because it's a nothing. All right. Now, suppose you are invited to a lost person's house. Now, we live in the first century here. All right. We're Corinthian citizens, and you have some lost neighbors that invite you over to, say, their daughter's getting married, and they're going to serve this great big meal. And they're not saved, they're not Christian. You and your wife, or you and your husband, y'all are Christians. So if any of them believe, for the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof, if any of them that believe not bid you to a feast, all right, you're invited to a lost person's house for this meal, and ye be disposed to go, you want to go. Your schedule will allow you to go. Whatsoever is set before you, eat, asking no questions for conscience sake. So what are we talking about? All right, you sit down, you and your spouse, and this lost couple now, they've invited you over for this celebration, and they bring out this beautiful prime rib roast. I mean, it just looks wonderful. And you as a Christian, you sit down and you go, oh, by the way, was this sacrificed to an idol? And if they say yes or no, it really doesn't matter at this point. Should you even ask about the meat? No. Because it has not been sacrificed to anything. Even if it was sacrificed to an idol, it was like nothing. And so he says, eat, asking no question for conscience sake. Now, would Paul, let's say Paul went to this house and he was offered this meat, Does he have the right to eat it? Yes. Yes, he does. What if it was sacrificed to idols? Should he question the history of the roast? No. No. All right? Don't do that. But, now let's say that you are not the only Christian invited to this feast. But if any man say unto you, this is offered in sacrifice to idols, now the situation's changed completely. Eat not for his sake that showed it, and for conscience sake, for the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. So, to keep your conscience clear, let's say somebody's there and they're going to be offended if you eat this meat. What do you do now? 5 minutes ago, you were going to eat it. Now this guy says it's been sacrificed to idols. Situation has changed. You don't want to offend this guy. And so you don't eat it, according to verse number 28. Now, verse number 29. Conscience, I say, not thine own, but of the other, for why is my liberty judged of another man's conscience? It's a great question. There are a lot of things, ladies and gentlemen, that are not immoral. They are not illegal. They're just some people that have preferences. And should you, for instance, give you an idea. Let's say me and Stacy go out to eat with, I don't know, Tony and Rose. And let's say that you guys are vegetarian. Right? And I know better than that. And so, and Stacy and I know that. And so we go to Manny's. Yeah, I know, Tony. You're exactly right. We go to Manny's. And I'm looking at, and I don't need a menu at Manny's. I know exactly what I want. I just give me a ribeye, medium, and And let's say that Tony and Rose are really dedicated vegetarians. And it's a matter of principle for them. And so we sit down. What would be the best thing? Now, I want a ribeye. But I'm with a couple that do not eat meat. What do you think I should do? Get a salad, yeah. Or just, can you send me a ribeye to the bathroom? I'll eat it in the bathroom. We go back. No, don't do it. I would order a salad. I would not, because eating what I want is not as important as not offending them. And I would not dare do that. Now, let's say we do this 3 or 4 times in a year, and we go one time, and the guy comes, and I say, well, I'll have your chef salad. And Tony says, preacher, I'm getting a ribeye. You get what you want, but I'm getting a ribeye. Oh, I'm changing my order real quick. All right, now I'm getting a ribeye. Now, the point is, what is the most important? Not offending people or doing whatever I want to do. It's not offending people. I'll give you a perfect idea. If somebody is offended in here today, literally, honestly offended by me not wearing a tie sometimes on Sunday morning, if somebody said, preacher, I don't think you ought to wear a sweater, or I don't think you ought to do that, and if it truly offends them, I wouldn't do it again. Is not, me not wearing a tie is not as important as you not being offended. Does that make sense? Anybody, by the way, offended that I don't wear a tie sometime on Sunday morning? Well, no. All right, now, verse number 29, Paul, or 30, for if I by grace be a partaker, why am I evil spoken of for that which I give thanks? So let's say, the meat is served, and I thank the Lord. Lord, thank you for this great meal. I appreciate it. And the question is, why would somebody question you if you're giving thanks for what has been served here? Whether therefore to eat or drink or whatsoever you do all to the glory of God. So here's kind of his bottom line. The word glory there, by the way, means for the reputation of. So whether you eat or drink, whatever you do it to reveal the reputation of God. Now, let me open the floor a little bit. Tell me something about the reputation of God that you know. He is what? Tell me a little bit about him. He's forgiving. So I should forgive? Exactly. All right, what else? He's perfect, loving, okay, just, okay. Now all these things we know. These are theological statements of truth. We know God is those things. Question: do we always act in accordance to the nature of God? We don't. How many of you can be bullheaded, stubborn, resentful, aggravating? How many of you are annoying? Okay. Thank you very much. Well, yeah, me too. Okay, put both hands. Wow. There we go. Is God ever annoying? Okay, so who is the pattern by which I need to live my life? It's the person of God. So I may have freedom to do a certain thing. Years ago, a long time ago, and I don't. There may be some. This is still going on. Movies were anathema in my home. When I was a kid coming up, we didn't go to movies. That was just the rule of the house. And I remember the first time I went out on a date, and I took my date to a movie. I felt like a dog. I mean, I was like, if my mom and dad, now they didn't know what we were going to do, and I felt like a dirty dog because I did what I never got to do, and I was fascinated by the whole concept of, watching this giant TV screen. Now, is it wrong? Is it immoral? Is it illegal? Is it illicit to go to a movie? Now, some people might think it still is. Now, I'm very picky about what I go see. Exactly. I'm very, I love Westerns. I love a horse opera. That's just the way I love Gunsmoke and The Rifleman and my favorite movie of all time, Dances with Wolves. If y'all ever seen that movie? Oh my word. I love Dances with Wolves. And so here's the thing. What if something that you have liberty to do is going to offend someone? What would you do? I mean, don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what you would actually do. Try not to offend anybody by not doing that, right? Okay. I think that is exactly what Paul was talking about. Now I'm getting hot. Y'all getting too warm? Okay. So, verse number 31 says, whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do all to reveal the reputation of God. So, what would God do in any situation? See, God has the authority to do anything he wants, but here's the difference between us. Anything I want, I may be doing something wrong. God would never do anything wrong. And so therein lies the disjunction between the two of us. And so, whatever I do, I am to do for the reputation of God. So if there are things that we do, like this eating of the meat, one week it may be perfectly fine because nobody says anything about it. The next week, somebody gets all, they get their knickers in a swivet about you eating meat that was sacrificed to idols, and so you don't eat it. And so Paul said, I become all things to all men, that I might by some means save some. So it is not as important, go back to the Tony and Rose thing, what would be more important? Me getting what I want to eat or not offending Tony and Rose? That would be the most important issue. I would not do that. All right, now, verse number 32. There are three groups of people. They're Jews, Gentiles, and the church. Look at verse 32. Give none offense either to the Jews. So now what were some of the peculiarities of the Jewish religion? They wouldn't eat pork, for instance. So when Paul was eating with Jews, and maybe there were some Gentiles involved, and they bring a big old pork loin, a bacon-wrapped pork loin. Would Paul eat the bacon-wrapped pork loin? No, he would not. What's wrong with eating a bacon-wrapped pork loin? Nothing. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. All right? So, don't give offense to the Jews, nor to the Gentiles. Now, we're Gentiles. We're non-Jewish people. Or to the church of God. So, these three groups of people that we are not to offend. And by the way, there are no other groups of people. Neither Jew, Gentile, or the church of God. So, who am I not to offend? Anybody. Exactly, Shirley. I don't have the freedom or the license. Well, I'm a Christian. I can do what I want to do. No, you can't. I don't have the liberty to do anything I want to do, even if what I want to do is not wrong. If it offends your conscience, I am to abide by your conscience. And you say, well, everybody has different opinions about what you can and cannot do. What should you do? You find out what the conscience allows from that person, and you don't offend. And give you another illustration. I don't have a problem with my wife wearing slacks. I don't. Now, I know some churches that have very strict dress standards, and you ladies would not be allowed in the building. I went to a church one time, and there was a sign on the front door, women in slacks not allowed in this building. Yeah. Oh, yes, sir. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, do what? That's the way you were raised. There wasn't a law, but back in the 50s and 60s, ladies did not wear slacks to church. You wore dresses and skirts, and the guys wore suits, basically, and you ladies would wear white gloves and a pillbox hat. Y'all remember that? The pillbox hat? Well, things have changed. I do not have a problem with you ladies wearing slacks to church. I don't have a problem. Now, what if, let's say I get invited to speak at a church, and it's one of those. Stacy always asks me, what's the dress code? And I'll say, well, this is a dresses-only church. She'll wear a dress or a skirt, and no questions asked. Could she wear slacks? Is it against the law? Would she be arrested for wearing slacks? No. What would be the problem with her wearing slacks? Nothing wrong with it, but what would be the issue? It would offend somebody. So what's more important? Her wearing what she would want to wear on a cold winter day like this, or not offending somebody? And I'm telling you, the issue is bring no offense. The Jew, the Gentile, the Church of God, don't do that. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Some crazy stuff's happened in the past about that. If your hair, and I remember these days, some of y'all might remember, if your hair touched your ears, a guy, you got the skunk eye, because your hair wasn't supposed to be over your ears, and just like Shirley said, some really silly things through the years have popped up. And so verse number 32 says, do not offend anyone. So if you go to a foreign country, for instance, and they have some cultural prohibitions there. Let's say you don't drink carbonated drinks in a culture, but they sell them at the store. And you're there to maybe on a mission trip, and that church, they don't drink carbonated drinks for whatever reason. What would be the best thing to drink? Water. I was in Canada years ago and was preaching a revival meeting at this church, and two groups of people used the building. Our group used it, and then later another group used it that did not believe in drinking coffee. So here's what they would have to do. We went down into the basement, and they had coffee and donuts and all that kind of stuff before church. All right? When the service was over, they grabbed all their coffee pots and all that stuff and hustled it out of the building and got it gone so it wouldn't offend this other group that comes in that for some reason thought coffee was wrong. I don't drink coffee. I can't stand it, but I don't think it's wrong. I'll buy you a cup. I don't have a problem with that. I just don't like the taste that smells great. If it tasted like it smelled, I'd drink it all the time. I guess because it's got caffeine. I don't know what the problem was. But I mean, they just packed all this stuff up, like they were smuggling something out of the building that was illegal or something. Now, question is this. Who is the stronger Christian? The one that just does what he wants to do and forget you guys. I don't care what Tony and Rose think. I'm getting a ribeye. And offend the dickens out of them, because I'm old enough. I can buy a ribeye if I want to. I can do that. What is the issue here? Doing what you want to do or not offending people. And Paul stands on the side, don't offend anybody. Now, the stronger Christian will surrender his liberty. The weaker Christian will always fight for his liberty. Well, I can do this, ain't nothing wrong with it. Okay? Now I'm going to do it anyway. Okay? Say again. Right. Exactly. And it's the weaker Christian that does whatever he wants to do, thinking he's strong. I can do what I want to do. And so, and this is like not an issue today. Eating meat is not really an issue today. Now, if we would invite, say, a Jewish couple to our home for dinner, I would not serve them pork chops. I wouldn't put them through that. I would serve them something that would be kosher for them. Now, and if I went to their house, the same thing would apply here. And so there are a lot of issues. Can you think of some issues that there's a preferential division among Christians or even lost people? What is something that you think is a divisive issue? It's not illegal or immoral. It's a matter of opinion. Can you think of one? Instrumental music. There are churches that do not have instrumental music. They will not play any kind. Everything's a cappella. So, if you were invited to sing at one of these churches, and you have not 8-track tapes, where am I going? You've got music on thumb drive, all right? You got music on thumb drive. Would you use it? If this church, it is a real issue with them about instrumental music. How would you sing? Sing a cappella. He said, well, it's my music. I can do what I want to do. Not really. Not really. Now, I couldn't get arrested, but I could offend a building full of people by violating their conscience. And say, well, that's stupid for them to believe that. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay? Right? Uses music, right? Well, you never know. That's a good question, but you don't know. Yep. Right. Excuse me. Right. Exactly. And to your point, if I knew the couple was vegetarian, guess where I would not take them? To Manny's, because if I go to Manny's, I'm like, I'm going to take them to some place where I don't necessarily like the meat anyway, it'd make it a little easier on me. But good point. But on the average, do you think most of us as Christians think like that? Or do we say, "Hooey on the world. These people aren't saved. I can do what I want to do." Do you think that's probably the way a lot of us as Christians behave and choose and make a decision? Yes, I think so. Now, verse number 33, Paul says, "Even as I please all men in all things, not seeking mine own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved." So what's the bottom line here? Well, I can offend this guy and go ahead and order my steak. And let's say sometime in the future I have an opportunity to witness to him. You think he's going to remember that? I remember when we went out and you ordered what you wanted, and I mean, you just completely stepped all over what I thought was right. I think I'm going to have a hard time now winning him to the Lord because I didn't show the humility of the Lord in that situation. But let's say after 3 or 4 times of going out to eat, he might say, "You've always been, I know you like ribeyes, but you've always been very kind and considerate. You go ahead and order what you want. It does not offend me." Now I think I've been given freedom from him, to do what I want to do or to order what I want. But we live in a world that is so self-orbiting. I will do I will wear what I want to wear. I will say what I want to say. I will go where I don't care what anybody says. And we are so autonomous. We do not live by standards any longer. We live by the emotion of the moment. Whatever I feel like doing, whatever I want to do, whatever's profitable to me, whatever's beneficial to me. And we just walk all over people. And then we wonder why people don't come to church. We wonder why. I've asked my neighbor a bunch of times, and, it just doesn't seem to, it very well could be that I have just trampled all over his conscience so many times, that I've hardened him to my lifestyle. I've hardened him to the Lord that I love and serve. And so Paul, he goes back now, and he says in verse number 31, "Whether you eat or drink, can eating a meal be an evangelistic tool?" Yes. Can what you drink be an evangelistic tool? What about whatever you do? Can it be an evangelistic tool? Does it always have to be in church? No. I live very little of my life in this building. I'm here on Sunday morning for, a couple hours. I'm here Sunday night and Wednesday night. I bet I'm not in this building 5 hours a week. I live most of my life out there on roads and streets and buildings and school, wherever. I'm not in here very often at all. And so I have more of an opportunity to impact people out there. Now, do I have an opportunity to impact people here just like you do? Yes, absolutely. But it is a minority of my time. And so I need to know my culture, know the people that I'm with, and I need to find out what is extremely offensive to them. If I'm going to be hanging out with some people and the color red is offensive to them for some reason, I'm not wearing red. I'll wear something else. And I'm going to maneuver and manipulate, as we all should, maneuver and manipulate through the course of life. I don't want to offend people. I really don't. Now, is there a line? What if me preaching Jesus as the Son of God is offensive to somebody? I'm sorry about that. See, that's a matter of principle. That's not a preference. That's a matter of principle. And principle is a law or a rule based on God's character by which we govern our lives. And so there are principles, and those principles cannot be violated. You can't do that. But if it's a preference, and everybody has preferences, we're watching the playoffs. Yes, sir. That's exactly what he wants you to do. We're watching the playoffs, and last night was San Francisco and who? Yeah, Green Bay. I didn't have a dog in that fight. It was cold there. It was raining like crazy. And the stadium was full of 2 fans. Green Bay, San Francisco. Now, are those preferences? See, some of these people take that's a principle to them. You see some of the stuff these guys and gals wear. Mostly it's guys. Guys, I don't know, we're idiots. I don't know what's the problem with. Have y'all seen some of the stuff these people wear at these football games? I'm like, that's somebody's son up there. Don't you know mama is, and it'd be 4 below zero, and these guys got their shirts off. And I'm thinking, wow, that's a little more than a preference to this guy. There are some people that'll kill you over this kind of stuff, And I think we need to be very careful not to principalize a preference. Please don't do that. Because when you do that, you are, number one, you're doing what God has not told you to do. Preferences are not principles. If you like Kansas City, is anything wrong with that? Sure there is. Especially when they play Miami. Yes, there's a... No. Absolutely not. It's perfectly fine. Now, how about hacking somebody's 401k and stealing their retirement account? That's a principle. You don't do that. He says now that, and this is a big, big issue in the first century, this matter of eating meat sacrificed to idols. And Paul said, yeah, I can do that. Now, what do you think the Jews would think of that? I can't believe you ate the meat that was sacrificed to idols. Well, I was with a Gentile family. They had I didn't ask. Don't ask. If you've got a question, don't ask. Just eat it and enjoy it. Say, thank you so much. I've enjoyed the time we had together tonight. Love to invite you to church. And so if you don't make an issue out of preferences, I think you're very wise to do that. And so, again, let's not step over the line and start compromising principle here. Well, some people believe that Jesus is the Son of God and some people don't, so it really doesn't matter. Oh, yeah, it does. You say, I believe Jesus is the Son of God. If you don't believe that, I can't change that, first of all. And number two, I don't want to. And I am not going to present the truth with a nasty attitude. I'm to preach the truth in love, but I can't change that. And so I think even when we're talking about principle-based issues, we need to present that in love and humility and not rub that in people's face and grind their face in the concrete of what we know to be true. Don't do that. Let's not be nasty and have really rank attitudes about even things that are true, because that just pushes people away from us. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. Are you comfortable now? Are you cool? Warm? All right. I don't want y'all to be uncomfortable. Yes, sir. Absolutely. And, Adam, somebody may say, I know you're a Christian and you don't eat meat sacrificed to idols, but you ate this. What's the problem? Perfect opportunity to explain. Perfect opportunity. All right. Thank you, Lord, for the day. Thank you for those who are here. Bless our service this morning in Jesus' name. Amen.